This is a galaxy-wide transmission of the United Federation of Planets. The United Federation of Planets Historical Society, in association with Memory Alpha, presents The 4 Years' War.
Stardate 2241.03. The planet Arcanus 4. Founded nearly a century before, this research outpost has grown into a flourishing, full-scale city. It is a shining example of Federation progress.
There could be no Federation without Earth, and the fact that the humans could lead the formation of the Federation just a few years after their war with the Romulan Empire is nothing short of extraordinary.
But it represents something very different to the Klingon Empire. Growing tired of diplomacy, their High Chancellor proclaims, if words were water, the humans would drown us all.
The bad blood between the humans and the Klingons meant that the job of preventing war and leading the peace delegations fell to Vulcan. Regrettably, we failed.
For 12 hours, the Klingon disruptors do not stop. Arcanus is reduced to rubble. Thousands of its inhabitants are dead. Countless more are missing. The first victims in what will come to be known as the 4 Years' War.
They've been expanding their empire for 200 years before the Federation was formed. That there would be a conflict with the Klingon people at some point was obvious to most of the members of Starfleet.
The Klingons were certain that they could merely take anything they wanted. Starfleet's early losses did little to dissuade them of that notion.
Coriana 6, Vesta, Arcanus. We took some major beatings the first 6 months. For most of that first year, our mission was just to slow them down while we fell back.
Unfortunately, the Klingons were unconvinced the Federation was any sort of match for them, and their belief in their superiority left us little room to negotiate.
Well, at that point, about the only thing we were doing that impressed the Klingons was dying well. And there was plenty of that.
The Klingon Supreme Commander, the architect of the invasions, was a warlord named Karn.
Karn the Undying is what they called him.
The Klingons revered him, with good reason.
Vulcan intelligence is, if I may say, unparalleled, but even for us, he was a mystery.
It wasn't until the formation of the Federation that the High Council began to take Earth seriously. And even after the Federation was formed, many on the High Council thought it as a mere political alliance. Starfleet was never seen as a match for the Imperial Navy. Certainly not one that would impede the growth of the Empire.
Their whole civilization, their whole culture, is a monument to the art of war.
The early campaigns, yes, the Klingons were toying with us. They were using a strategy known to the Klingon people as which loosely, roughly translates as the strategy of least respect. The epitome of their arrogance occurred during the ambush of Inverness 5.
The Inverness system, as you call it, was our first objective.
Inverness. 5 planets, all colonized.
Stardate 2243.3, the highly populated dilithium-rich planets of the Inverness system.
For your kind, those planets are merely a source of dilithium. For us, those planets are sacred.
Goddamn Inverness 5. What a mess.
It was the first time they used it on us. It was an old Klingon tactic. They had a word, Nakchovit. Means devourer.
Day after day, it was the same thing. I'd get called in to support some kind of counterattack. By the time I got into orbit, my orders had been changed. Attack called off. Battle was already over. We'd pull out of warp into a junkyard.
Fragments of starships bouncing off my hull. Fragments of the crews as well.
18 starships destroyed.
Pick up the survivors, beam them up.
We'd be beaming them up, and one of two things would happen. The transporters would blow out, or the Klingons would show up and start shooting.
I could look down from orbit and see trails of smoke. For miles.
Well, that was it. Something had to change, or we were done.
An Andorian acquaintance once said, "Don't push the pink skins to the thin ice." Wasn't very eloquent, but the Klingons found it to prove quite prophetic.
After 2 years of almost constant defeat, the head of Starfleet, Admiral Slater, is forced to step down. Across the Federation, billions wonder who would replace him.
I was on the bridge of the Xenophon. It was my first ship in the war. An old Markland-class destroyer. Lieutenant Kane, our comms officer, said that there was a fleet-wide broadcast from Starfleet. I told him to punch it up on the big screen. And that's when we heard it was Ramirez.
That name spread like wildfire. You ask anybody where they were when they heard it, and they'll remember.
We are facing an enemy that is consumed and committed to our total destruction.
His first speech to the Federation Council was incredible.
An enemy that demands to be fought, and we will fight.
There were 40,000 people in Archer Arena.
But I say to you, our greatest challenge is not the might of a Klingon fleet.
And they all wanted one thing.
The greatest challenge laying before us is to do what must be done without undoing the dream of the Federation.
Hope.
For myself, I have but one fear: destroying the dream of the Federation. Compared to such a loss, I do not fear the Klingon Empire!
It was a good speech.
Until I heard Admiral Ramirez speak. I had not foreseen the possibility of a peace between the Federation and the Klingons, nor had I foreseen the possibility that the Federation might win.
The battle cry of Admiral Ramirez sweeps across the Federation.
The first goal was to create a class of ship that could spring Starfleet back into action, back into battle. We had to leapfrog Klingon technology.
It was called the Ares class. It was exactly what we needed.
We had over a dozen members It was the first pure warship that Starfleet had ever built.
As for Vulcans, though we limited our contribution to propulsion, environmental, and defensive technologies, there were many who wanted us to end our participation in the war altogether.
A Vulcan's gonna do what a Vulcan's gonna do. But the Andorians, they were happy to supply us the phasers.
Stardate 2244.1, near the planet Cygnus 3.
There will always be detractors who think you're taking the initiative too soon, that you're rushing the offensive. I disagreed.
The leadership of Admiral Ramirez is a welcome change, but his grand plan has yet to be tested in battle.
We had the ships, and we had a corps of battle-tested commanders. It was time to take the initiative.
Well, that was Ramirez's first roll of the dice. And they landed exactly the way we wanted them to, the way we needed them to.
The code name was Operation Pegasus. Pegasus was the first test of the Ares class against the ship it was designed to defeat, the D6.
The Ares class looked good in simulations, real good. But data can only take you so far. The only true test for a combat vessel is combat.
The new Federation ships were unexpected.
And then there was Garth. That mad Isarian son of a bitch. That was his day.
Garth likes to play down his contribution. Don't you believe it? What he did that day, no captain had ever done.
We got lucky. It was Sonya's maneuver that gave me the opening.
Sonya pulled a feint to starboard. Garth just went for it.
It was like a Klingon maneuver.
It was a new ship. They said she was tough. I want to see what she could take.
After the Battle of Cygnus 3, our ship captain started giving the Federation its due as a worthy adversary. And for the first time, we took notice of Garth of Izar.
It was a Klingon that gave me that name. I guess there are a lot worse things that a Klingon could call you.
Yeah, sure, I'll tell you. They called me Queen Bitch Whore of the Federation.
The Ares class had withstood its first trial by fire and passed through the gauntlet victorious.
The Ares had proven itself, and it continued to prove itself. It was bigger, faster, more agile, drip drop. And it was better armed than anything we'd had before.
We had lost the advantage.
At the time, Starfleet crews preferred to fight among their own kind.
Crews might be Andorian or Tellarite or Vulcan or human, each of which had their own strategy and tactics.
One never knew who you were fighting. And knowing one's enemy is the first rule of war. With the launch of their newer ships and the experience their commanders had gained, our progress was slowed. It was frustrating to fight Starfleet.
Confident in their Ares cruisers, this brash corps of captains took back 3 systems in 30 days. But the war was not over yet. Stardate 2244.9, Starfleet's next-generation heavy cruiser, is behind schedule. Admiral Ramirez himself arrives to deal with the problem when he receives a coded transmission from Starfleet intelligence.
The Klingons were building something big.
We heard these rumors about the D7.
We'd proven we could take on the Klingons. But the D7 changed all that.
D7 would break the back of Starfleet. We had 3 shipyards across the Klingon Empire built there.
If the Klingon High Council had listened to Karn,
If the High Council had listened to me,
they would have had D7s at Cygnus 3.
the D7 would have been ready for battle.
And all our new Ares-class ships would have been cut to pieces.
And we would have defeated the Federation.
It had become an arms race, a war of technology. The new class of ship was proving more complicated than we realized. We needed more time.
If the Klingons launched them first, we would have been outmatched and outgunned again. And by now, the Klingons had learned better than to squander that advantage.
I needed another option. I went to my 3 best captains, Garth, Ribbo, Trask, and I asked them each for a plan of action.
The Admiralty had 3 different plans. The first one wasn't worth spit. The second one was a good plan, solid plan. But the third was Garth's.
Garth asked me, out of the blue, if we could have a drink.
That's when I told her I had an idea for a battle plan.
My first reaction, let me just say this. I was really glad we were drinking.
Garth and Sonia came into my quarters.
I showed him a rough outline of my plan, and I said, "What do you think?"
Sam sat there.
He looked at it, and then he looked at me. And he said,
100% insanity. A bloodbath waiting to happen. That was Axanar.
Axanar. Its capture would put the Klingons within striking distance of Andoria, Teller Prime, Vulcan, and Terra. It is the heart of Federation space. Further, Karn's spies discovered that Starfleet's next-generation heavy cruiser is being built in orbit over Axanar. This is his chance to destroy Starfleet's only match for the D7. Garth of Izar knows Axanar is a target that Karn cannot refuse.
When Garth first presented his plan to battle the Klingons on Axanar, my first thought was how far he'd come. I mean, he was always an extraordinary explorer before the war, but I knew in his heart he was first a soldier.
"We didn't sign up to be warriors. That's not what Starfleet's about. We proved that we could do what we needed to do to defend the Federation. I'm proud of everyone who I served with, especially those that didn't make it back."
So I signed off on the plan to end conflict with one final battle, to end it at Axanar.
D7 was the ultimate expression of the Klingon warship. Technologically superior to anything in the quadrant. We would launch her and devastate the Federation fleet.
Stardate 2245.1. The D7 enters the war.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark Edward Lewis with Cinema Sound and your friendly neighborhood Axanar post-production supervisor, sound supervisor, and editor. You know, we get a lot of people asking us, how can we be involved with Axanar? And as we move forward with pre-production, we're discovering that indeed we're going to need a lot of help, and especially around post-production, and especially around sound in post. And just so you all know, the first place we're going to look and ask for help is from the members of Cinema Sound. Now, what's Cinema Sound, you ask? Well, good question. Cinema Sound is the hub for independent media creatives getting that Hollywood-level, powerful audio and sound immersion into their productions. We have over an 85-hour education that takes you from I don't know what I'm doing to professional level deliveries in 5.1 and higher. There's hundreds and hundreds of articles available on all kinds of subjects of sound for picture and great sound on our blog. And of course, we have a YouTube channel where we have hundreds of videos, including some about how we did Prelude to Axanar, and lots of stuff to fill your bandwidth. But we'll be going to the Cinema Sound members who have been through a lot of this education and have a really great skill on the whole. Now, how do you become a Cinema Sound member? Super easy. Just go to cinemasound.com and click on the Become a Member tab, give us your particulars, and then you'll be the first to know when the call to arms goes out for Axanar post-production needs, especially around sound. Now, if you don't want to be a part of Axanar, but you definitely want to learn that trade, how to get powerful, immersive, even 3D audio into your productions, well then do the same thing. Cinemasound.com, click on Become a Member, give us your particulars, and then you'll be involved in an ever-growing group, really a team of independent media creatives who are looking to better their craft and create powerful, emotionally moving, and immersive products in multimedia for their friends, members, and clients. There's lots to be done between now and post-production of Axanar, as I'm sure you can realize, but that gives you a lot of time to be able to integrate yourself into the Cinema Sound site, learn how we're doing what we're doing, kind of get up to speed with how Cinema Sound members do what they do so excellently, and then be able to execute when we're ready to get into post. I'm Mark Edward Lewis with Cinema Sound, and until then, we'll see you in post.
Even if you're set.
Stardate 2245.1. The D7 enters the war.
Hi, I'm Alec Peters, and welcome to the Ares Studios Patreon campaign. Ares Studios is a small independent film studio located in Lawrenceville, Georgia, just right outside of Atlanta, which is the hottest film market in the country. Ares Studios is a separate legal entity from Axanar Productions, which made the award-winning Prelude to Axanar Star Trek fan film and is continuing with 2 more episodes of the 4 Years War documentary. After moving from Los Angeles, Ares Studios acquired the set pieces from Axanar Productions. And with a talented group of volunteers, we've been maintaining and finishing those sets ever since. That includes the USS Ares bridge set you see here, Garth's quarters, a corridor, and a Klingon bridge. We hope to use these sets in Axanar and in other fan films. Ares Studios has also spearheaded an academy program with the Gwinnett County School System. This is a program where high school students can come and learn about film production and practice their craft on our amazing sets. It's been really successful in its pilot phase. We finished our first student film here, and we look forward to expanding and developing the program moving forward.
Hi, I'm Pasha Savorin, lead video teacher for Gwinnett County Public Schools. Aries Studios has been amazingly generous by opening up their studio for our students to work on their video projects. They're also partnering with us to create workshops and other mentoring opportunities where professionals from Georgia's film industry can help prepare our students for careers in Georgia's film industry.
During our first year here in Atlanta, we enjoyed the generous sponsorship of Otherworld Computing, who covered our expenses while we worked to finish the bridge set and develop relationships with the schools and film industry here in Atlanta. Now, we are asking you, our fans, to help support the efforts of our hardworking volunteers in maintaining and expanding these remarkable sets and facilitating a unique platform for students and fan filmmakers alike. Our expenses at the studio are relatively low, about $4,000 a month. That covers rent, utilities, and insurance. So we only need 800 patrons to give us $5 a month to cover those expenses. That's about the cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks, or 17 cents a day. Anything we receive above that target will go to improving the studio. A green screen, a lighting rig, enhanced power, and so on. This past year, Aries Studios hosted Axicon, the first ever Axanar convention. And we filmed the entire event. So at the $5 level, you'll be getting 22 hours of video covering every single panel and interview that happened at the convention with J.G. Hertzler, David Gerald, Gary Graham, and more. Now you can donate any amount. Even $1 or $2 will get you access to exclusive content every single week. Behind the scenes on Axanar, what's happening at the studio, how's the bridge set coming, and if we hit our goal of $4,000 a month, Aries Studios will begin producing a weekly Star Trek news show called Real Trek, covering all the Star Trek news that's out there, whether it's Star Trek Discovery, the Orville, Axanar, or any Star Trek fan film. So at whatever level you're giving at, you're going to be getting exclusive content not available on the Axanar or Aries Studios YouTube channels. So thank you for considering supporting Aries Studios. We look forward to working together to bring you unique content, to preserve and enhance these amazing sets, and to give unique opportunities for students and fan filmmakers alike. For only a few dollars a month, you can help preserve the dream and help bring real Star Trek to life. Live long and prosper.
Hey all, I am at the Warner Robins Air Force Base Museum of Aviation, which is the number 3 ranked aviation museum in all the United States. Now, they say it's number 2, but let's face it, Smithsonian's 1 and Dayton U.S. Air Force Museum is number 2. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the things, some of the amazing displays here real quick. And I'm telling you this because we want to do like an Axanar field trip. Here to this event, to this museum. So I think it'd be really cool. So, oh yeah, look at that, F-16 of the Thunderbirds, right? That's pretty cool. Let's see what else we got here. So, SR-71, yeah, that's pretty cool, huh? Also U-2, and that's an original U-2. That's like the number 8th production U-2, which it actually flew off the USS Ranger aircraft carrier. Can you believe they actually flew one of these things off an aircraft carrier? So anyway, there's that. And then, so you see here, they got a Global Hawk, which is enormous. I didn't know it was that big. It's so big. Back there, Delta Dart, Delta Dagger, F-86, F-111, right? So some really cool stuff. So we're gonna do a field trip here for Axanar fans, and we're thinking about it. It might be like in conjunction with the next Axicon. So, but everyone needs to come here because it's amazing. It's like a hall that they do events in too. So anyway, that's it for now. Talk to you later.
This is a galaxy-wide transmission of the United Federation of Planets. The United Federation of Planets Historical Society, in association with Memory Alpha, presents...
For me, as an actor, we're always looking for great material, looking for a wonderful character to play, a great story to be part of,
And if you're like me, who's a student of history, I'm very much into the space program, exploring the universe, the world out there, theoretical probabilities and possibilities. And so I have always loved being part of any project that actually has more foundation in something real.
I knew right when I walked onto the set that it was going to be a good time, that we had the possibility, we had given ourselves the chance to do something that worked.
Not all fan films are produced like this one.
Axanar kind of upped the game all the way through. I was very impressed with what Christian and Alec came up with.
Fan films are, I think, the purest form of love for Star Trek.
All right, thank you.
Christian and Alec stalked me. It was terrifying. And then they kidnapped me and threatened my life if I didn't do this project.
It's been professionalism from the moment we walk in the door. I mean, we're in a great facility.
Check the hair.
True professionals, the makeup department, the people that are invested and that have spent time in Star Trek. You guys talking to us, our cameras everywhere.
To come to Hollywood and make a fan film, and I don't even say to call it a fan film, I call it an independent production.
I was happy to put on Saval again. Happy. And not just Saval, but Saval 80 years in the future, 75 years in the future. I love that.
We had crew that were walking off of Marvel shoots and onto our set.
I thought, wow, what a kick. How many times do you get to do that? You played yourself, and now you can get to play yourself 80 years older.
And there are dozens of fan films, from glorified home movies on up to productions that are really good, that are great, that like Star Trek Phase 2, which has been around for 10 years, which has 12,000 square foot facility with the sets just as they were on the Desilu studio.
When I met Alec, I just thought, well, this guy's going to be a problem. He's just trouble all over the place because he's going to expect me to work hard, and I don't like that.
It started out as something that we didn't need a lot of trust. It started out as something, well, yeah, it'll be me and you will have some laughs. But before you know it, neither of us can really help but do things in the way that we do. I can't help but kind of add production value. And he loves the idea of production value, which I love in him. I love him for loving production value.
And then introduced me to Christian. And they just talk. I'm just in the middle. And there's a talkathon going, and they're all Star Trek all over the place. And I finally said, okay, let me read it. And then I read it, and I said, oh, this is awesome.
Well, at that point, about the only thing we were doing that impressed the Klingons was dying well. There's no difference between this and any other terrifically managed and organized independent production I've ever been a part of. This is much better than almost all of them.
It seems like every person on this set is either a talented pro or an amazing amateur.
These guys love what they're doing, love the characters, love the storyline, and it fuels me.
What I learned on Prelude was frequent and early collaboration with as many of these people as I can get. Because it's great when you give great people a chance to communicate about their aspect of the work early, good stuff happens. When you start that cycle early, the earlier you start those cycles, the better it gets. If you start them late, you can only burn so hot.
People buy into your vision. If you can tell the story right and you're passionate, you believe, and you have a plan, people will buy into your vision.
I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and from the time I was 9 years old, I was reading science fiction books. And then when I was a young actor in New York City, I came home every day to watch Captain Kirk, and Star Trek. Star Trek was my favorite series.
There could be no Federation without Earth. And the fact that the humans could lead the formation of the Federation just a few years after their war with the Romulan Empire is nothing short of extraordinary. Every role, and just stepping outside the genre of science fiction, every role requires you to accept as a given the world that you're in when Normal logic argues against it. There are people off camera that you are pretending to not see. There is a situation that is not real, but you are creating it in your mind and working with actors who are creating it in their minds.
Because an actor's life is filled. You go in front of auditions and whatnot, and audiences and they're all saying, "Okay, prove it. Let's see what you got." It's almost an animosity, an inimical relationship. John Houseman used to talk about going before the show started, whatever show he was directing, and he would go out and peek through the curtain in a live production, and he'd look at the audiences and say, "F you, F you, F you, F you, F you." And there was so much, there's so much of that in this business, rejection, that to go in front of an audience who loves you before you do anything, which is what the sci-fi audience is about. And they don't love the actor, they love the character. And because of that, it takes all the pressure off what going out on stage, you talk about anything. And it's an incredible blessing for an actor. And although it's not real. There's nothing in our lives that is real. This is what we do.
One step further, if you put on prosthetics and a wig and mouth things and eyes, and you look at yourself in these robes that are so foreign to what you're used to, it's almost easier to create these characters. You know what I'm saying?
I love the adventure, going where no man or woman had gone before, exploring, impossible circumstances and new worlds and cultures, but it always had that element of humanity, of trying to bring out the best in human beings. Underneath that, everything was always about trying to make things better, right?
I'm literally coming in kind of green, which is great. I'm not coming in with all these preconceived ideas of anything.
It's really, I think, what we human beings are all about. As messed up as we get, as complex as we are, as conflicted as we are, and as off course as we get, ultimately there is a part of us that wants to stand up and do the right thing.
What we're trying to do is make something a little different. I don't want to say better, because that would diminish the other fan films that are out there where people are pouring their heart and soul into it.
We see so many interviews these days. How do you stand out? In order to give weight to these events that never really happened, in order to do the first military documentary in the Star Trek galaxy, three-quarter profile lends a weight to things. Those were the elements that really kind of conspired to make that choice. I told this all to Milton Santiago, our director of photography, and he said, yeah, I love that. Have you seen Facing Ali? And I said, no, but I had loved Ali. My father before he was an actor, was a boxer. He boxed in the U.S. Army and was an amateur fighter. And we watched all the fights in the 70s, really a wonderful age for that sport. And that there was a documentary about all the men who fought Ali from their perspective. I wanted to see it. And there it was, this beautiful, beautiful three-quarters and profiles on these men. And it lent an amazing weight to these sporting events that they had participated in. It made it really, it just gave it a weight.
But we want to make something that is professional quality, that fans will see and they will love every bit as much as the real thing. There were 40,000 people in Archer Arena.
But I say to you, our greatest challenge is not the might of a Klingon fleet.
I kind of think that execution is often the easy part, because you get great people, and this is a lesson I learned from my father. You get great people and you leave them alone. Let them do what you brought them in to do.
So there's something, obviously there's something in the air, and that's why we're going to make magic today, or die trying.
So the key is getting great people. So if I can bring in 6 great people, and my dad also always said A players hire A players and B players hire C players.
It's very impressive. It's very impressive, and this is. I'm not sure what the outcome of this movement will be.
So I go out and get 6 A players. Well, they're going to go out and they're each going to get 6 A players, and so all of a sudden you have this entire team full of A players who all share your vision. And if they don't love Star Trek, they're probably excited about just the atmosphere here.
But I have a feeling it is a movement, And I have a feeling what you're saying about taking back Star Trek is where it's at.
All they needed to do was tell me what they were up to, who was involved, and really and truly by virtue of their intelligence and ability to communicate their picture clearly to me, I really got a sense that I was going to be in good hands and that this is going to be a real production.
I want everyone to come away from this and say, God damn, that was a great set I worked on.
That there would be a conflict with the Klingon people at some point was obvious to most of the members of Starfleet.
Yeah, I mean, I liked all that stuff. I liked Star Trek, I liked Lost in Space. I loved anything that took me outside of my dismal 3-channel universe that I had growing up.
Well, as you can see, the Klingons have been played by many different actors in many different ways. We've seen very articulate, very eloquent, almost Shakespearean Klingons. We've seen Neanderthal, animalistic, type Klingons. And people do tend to have a image of Klingons as being these, just wild, crazy warrior men that just, don't care about life and are willing to take on any challenge and war and battle and all that kind of stuff is what life is about. And there may be a certain truth to that energy, but think of a culture that has gone into space and has the technology this culture has.
It wasn't until the formation of the Federation that the High Council began to take Earth seriously.
I don't care what you have to say. This is a very highly sophisticated culture. So yes, there may be that Klingon spirit, and I look at it as like the 300 spirit. It's far more like the 300 to me than looking at the wild hordes, that tried to take over the world times past. I look at it as honestly very intelligent, very smart people who obviously have a warrior code, and that warrior code is something that some people don't understand. I do. Something I've always felt. I don't care whether it was Spartacus, I don't care whether it was the 300, whether it was Last of the Samurai and Kutsumoto. There is a honor and there's an integrity in that warrior code. And it's not about just going out and conquering. It's a deeper thing. It's wanting for a higher ideal, to challenge yourself, to go to a place that few men or women have ever gone to.
An Andorian acquaintance once said, "Don't push the pink skins to the thin ice." There have been many, as you said, many playing vocals, but there hasn't been any Gary Graham there. So I try to bring as much of me, my sensibilities, crossed with the requirements of the role. For Matt Sykes, for instance, in Alienation, I didn't grow up in Detroit like he did. I wasn't subjected to the rough upbringing on the streets as he was. So I have to create that from what I know, what I've experienced, people I've met. I take that. It's like an equation. This times that equals this. So my sensibilities, my ideas times this fictitious backstory equals Matt Sykes. Same thing with Soval, and I prepare for every role in a completely different way, because every role is so different. I don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to keep doing the same guy, just in a different costume.
Having just watched Whom Gods Destroy last night, it was kind of like, it was kind of prep, right? I live for that one line. Should I know you, sir? And that line tells me everything about that character. And Garth was, there's a lot of lines that happen that you learn about Garth in Whom Gods Destroy. Kirk says he was one of his heroes at the Academy. Kirk says to him that your book is required reading. The Battle of Axanar is required reading at the Academy. He explored more worlds than any other Starfleet captain. We get these little things. And then at the end, there's such nobility in this man who's just been rehabilitated from this insanity that was not his fault, that was thrust upon him because of this injury and this technique for restoring his body that he really never should have had, right? These aliens show, out of the goodness of their heart, show him how to rehabilitate his body, and it drives him crazy. So it's this amazing redemption story, and then at the end, I just see this captain, when he gets out, he starts to come to, and you see it, and he says, Starship? And
it moves me.
Regarding fandom and the wide extent that it's out there, I had no clue.
For me, the whole journey, from that original Battlestar, and then going out and doing many, many other shows and other kinds of things, but really frustrated because I love the Battlestar story, and I saw so much potential in it, and yet they were not mining that dramatic possibility because the industry has always kind of had a very, enigmatic relationship to sci-fi.
I had no idea what I was getting into. I was not a sci-fi fan. Not that I wasn't a sci-fi fan on purpose. I just wasn't, I hadn't really fallen into the sci-fi world, so I didn't know anything about. I've heard of conventions, and I'd heard of fans, and
After we did Alienation and it started airing, people started seeing it, and I would get very, very positive fan mail, and I thought, wow, people are not only watching it but are responding positively to it. And then we were asked to Eric Pierpoint, who plays George, and the executive producer Kenny Johnson were asked to appear at these conventions. And I thought, oh, well, that's great. We'll just go in there and say thank you very much to the fans. But then they'd say, here's a microphone. You got 45 minutes. I go, wow, this is great. And I would just, be my goofy self and answer questions and posit my notions about doing the show and what the show's about. And it was fun. And then we sat outside and signed autographs, and the promoters thanked us very much, and we went on our merry way. And we did that a couple times.
It's like when someone says someone has baggage, you go, oh, we all have baggage. Well, some people have a lot of baggage, and sci-fi has a lot of fans. So being a part of this show, I just can't tell you how grateful I am to have been a part of it. And to be embraced by the fans, to have been loved to be hated, and then hated to be loved, I
had one guy tell us that he had a very terrible relationship with his father, and this was the one, but they both had this in common. They loved Alienation. They loved watching that show. And whenever it was on, they would talk about it, and it was like the only time in their lives that they really connected. And almost broke me up, to hear that.
As I came up in the 90s, there was a lot of work in the 90s. So some of us may have taken it for granted. Oh, this is what it's like, because I was working literally booking shit every 10 days. It's not with that frequency now, but because I booked so much then that my life is on sort of, like, I can honestly say to my daughter, to my son, to my friends, I am a working actor, and this is what I do. I am still welcomed and wanted at different conventions, as you mentioned, pop culture, Star Trek, horror, and sci-fi, and still go and still make, money that I didn't, diligently give over to the IRS.
I had not foreseen the possibility of a peace between the Federation and the Klingons, nor had I foreseen the possibility that the Federation might win. I go to my grave insisting Saval was misunderstood.
I love being the only female captain. I love that she's got a foul mouth and she's a bit of a cowboy, and she plays by her rules, and she's damn good at what she does, and she can still laugh and have a good time and get the job done. She doesn't have to act like a man to get the job done.
The character Ramirez, I saw him as a leader for unification, as somebody that truly represents getting different worlds together and united so that we can coexist in peaceful terms, which I think is the philosophy of the Federation to begin with. And so, not in a bombist way, but just in a person that stands for the future, and certainly has presidential ambitions, and just truly wants peace and not colonization. Wants some sort of, we don't want to be in war with each other all the time, turn around, somebody else is invading somebody else. We want it to stop.
I'm basically answering questions, line after line after line, and telling a story, and it's all going to be intercut to tell the bigger story. So in my mind, I have to create the arc of what I'm going through and the story behind what I'm talking about, if that makes any sense.
The approach to the Prelude to Axanar, the approach to the concept. When I read it, I said, oh, wait a minute, we're just talking, but there's these incredible visuals going on behind us, and I'm thinking, that would work.
Goddamn Inverness 5. What a mess. That story about Inverness, I'd already done my homework on it. So the emotional peak was what you saw, the wash. And then we'll let that go. And then do it again differently.
I was a dick, but I was a dick with design. That's DWD for you at tweeting this out. Dick with design. When I filmed the Enterprise pilot, first day of filming, I said to myself, wow, I like this setup. I would like to come back. And I would like to be a worthy foil for Archer. I would like to be the guy who just keeps him from his plans, if I can, and just gets in his face in a very Vulcan way. So I had that intent.
My character was introduced. I was not, when that the first day of production, it was not intended that my character was a founder. It wasn't until we got through a few days of production that Ira Bear made the decision to say, wait a minute, Worf might have a friend here in Martok, so why don't we, instead of making Galron the founder, because Galron was designated as that character in that one was going to be the founder on the Way of the Warrior. They said, no, it's too easy. Why don't we make Martok the founder? And we can put him on some prison planet somewhere, and in reality. So it's what they did. And after that episode, Ira Bear, the executive producer, said backstage, and he said, yeah, we can bring Martok back. We're going to bring him back. And I said, fine. In my mind, yeah, it's Hollywood. And then they did. And at that point, Ira said, and we can give Martok an artificial eye, so you don't have to have. I said, what are you talking about? No, this is much better to keep the pirate aspect of having a slashed. Klingon wouldn't replace a wound with a new eye. So he said, oh, okay. And that's how he got the one eye.
It was bigger, faster, more agile, drip drop. And it was better armed than anything we'd had before.
I grew up poor, man. I grew up raised by a single woman, my aunt. So, I don't take anything for granted. And anytime anybody is moved or affected by the work that I've done, I take it as a badge of honor.
The first time I heard drip drop was between takes. The crew's getting the next shot ready. Tony leans in and he says to me, hey man, what you think of this? And he says it on me. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just like that. And we did it a few times. I said, and as I said to all the actors, do it till you feel it. do it till you feel you got it. And he did it. And then at the end, what do you do? Any director knows, if an actor wants to improv, you let him improv, and then you make sure to get what's in the script too. So I did that, and I said, okay, Tony, this time without the drip drop. And he looked at me, gave me an eye. And then he did the line straight. And then I called cut, and he says, but I still like my drip drop. I think it means that it's like a great ride. It's just it's sleek. It's like the first time you sit behind a Maserati or a Lamborghini or the best vehicle you've ever driven, right? That's relative. I remember my 77 Toyota Celica felt like that to me when I first sat down in it, because it was mine.
Here's an interesting story. I've told some people this, but not a lot. But, the woman that raised me, my aunt, her name was Clara. She had passed away. And for about, 4 months, I was comatose. Because we were that close. It was because of her that I'm here. She put me in summer programs. She made sure I was a Boy Scout. She gave me different summer activities. She kept me out of gang life, okay? Even though gangs were all around me, somehow I managed to avoid that. So when I became an actor, she was fine with it because she knew that it fed me. And when she passed away of cancer, which for some reason we haven't found a cure for it to this day. Never forget when the doctor told me she had worked so hard, and I said, so what we got? He says, maybe 6 weeks. And I had to go out to the car, and I had to like hold it. She said, well, how did it go? You doing okay? Excuse me. So I couldn't move, right? And one day out of the blue, they sent me the script, The Visitor. And I said, oh my God, she's speaking to me. And I was able to channel her through that. And for some reason, that episode has affected so many people. And I think it's because of that parental child connection that all of us have at some point.
Acting is controlled and thought out lying. It's you say things that you don't really believe and feel things that you don't really feel. But the way to do it well is to believe a lie yourself. You know, when I lie to you, I'm not gonna try to convince you that what I'm telling is the truth. I'm actually gonna convince myself. I'm actually going to go over it in such great detail, such intense commitment to that detail that I have convinced myself. So it helps you if you're a little bit crazy, helps if you're a little bit pathological. That's the word.
As if the High Council had listened to me.
They would have had D7s at Cygnus 3.
The D7 would have been ready for battle.
And all our new Ares-class ships would have been cut to pieces.
And we would have defeated the Federation.
If you change a story, the fundamentals of a story where the heart, the soul of the story has been changed, then it's no longer the same story. But if you capture the heart and the soul of that story, and then you change or evolve some of the elements, okay, as long as you do it in a really, really good way, meaning if it's like replacing a character. If you replace a character with somebody you have no relationship to, don't care about, doesn't affect you in any way, well, you just lost me, right? But my God, if you bring an extraordinary actor that brings a whole other dimension to a character and yet gives you that character but brings it to life, maybe even in a more interesting way, who knows? Trouble is we get frozen on what we grew up with or what we liked before, but I'm always looking for, I love, whether it's me, Star Trek, Star Wars, any drama, it doesn't have to even be sci-fi, I look for extraordinary, wonderful performances, wonderful stories. And when you tell me a wonderful story, that's what I'm most interested in.
I literally had a bunch of 5-year-olds come up to me once, and recently in the last year, and they knew their parents had like raised them on Next Generation, so they knew exactly what Kern stood for, because he is kind of a rebellious teenager in a way, you know.
I got into acting to live many, many lives. I'm not satisfied. I'm a life hog. I'm not satisfied with one life. I have to live and climb into skins of many, many, many people.
And that's one of the interesting things about playing Admiral Ramirez today, because I'm chosen that he is a total expert on Klingon philosophy and the heart of a Klingon, having played one. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ramirez explains the Klingon philosophy, because he knows it, which is why I have this.
When I first auditioned, I said, first of all, I was already angry. I was sitting in the lot, because I'd blown some other audition for some other show, and I was pissed off, and I was just said, I don't even want to be in this town, and I was sitting in the lot. And Ron Surma, who was the casting director, I was sitting there angry, stewing about something, and he said, John, why don't you take a look at this script, see what you think about auditioning for this role, Martok. I said, what is it? He said, it's a Klingon. I said, oh, great, fine. I couldn't think of Alan Rickman. I'm a Shakespearean actor!
Once Star Trek happened, as an actor, my personal growth sort of solidified. My son was born, I accepted the role of Night of the Living Dead, the remake, which went on to also be a fan favorite. and I just started booking all the hip, TV shows, X-Files, NYPD Blue, all the things that were really, really popular at that time, and working nonstop. And my family is taken care of. My daughter is a grad student at Columbia, which is no easy task.
I said, fine. So I went in there and I said, okay, I'll audition for Klingon, but I'm not going to make him what I think are basically, overstated. I'm going to be quiet, contemplative, cerebral, conniving, not overt in my reactions, but concealed. So I did it.
I love Star Trek and I love you guys, and I hope that this justifies your patience and what you expect to see in continued Star Trek expressionism.
James Conway said, thank you. Do you know what a Klingon is? And I said, let me guess. You want a loud, overbearing, angry, abusive, much larger than life, larger than anything. That's what you want, really. Your basic Klingon. And he said, yeah. So I did that. And as I said, I was already angry. That made me angrier. That they didn't have the vision to understand. So I tossed this chair. It was a chair like that, except it was the old-fashioned kind with it's got sharp points. When the rubber things come off, it's got a point going on in the front. And I tossed the chair. I said, and it stuck into a wall. It wasn't that. It was closer. It was not as close as that. It traveled a distance, and that point stuck right in the lathe. It was an old in the Sternberg building, isn't it? Is that where and it's an old plaster and lathe wall, and it stuck right in there between two pieces of lathe on the inside. And that must have impressed him right off the bat. And then but it ripped off about a half of my thumbnail because it took it with the chair, and but I didn't feel it because I was pumped. I was pumped. Did I just do that?
It's good. People love it.
So I was bleeding while I was doing the audition, and it was and I was gesturing and sending little, blood drops on the wall and the ceiling, and I got done, and there was a silence, except for the blood going down to my head, and I said, thank you. And I left. And then I got cast. I think they were a little worried about me.
In acting, and you'll find this out early, all you young aspiring actors, what you find out, you don't just take rejection. You don't just have rejection for breakfast every day. You have humiliation and embarrassment. You're stuck in trade. So get comfortable in that suit of humiliation and embarrassment, because you're going to be experiencing it a lot. So what you do is you get so used to that as your default setting that you just slough it off and you don't give a damn. So another element of successful acting is not giving a damn. And not caring what people think of you as you blather on or stumble your line or run into the furniture, all that. Try not to do that. Try to accurately stand and deliver, with some huevos, some balls. But have a good time, be playful, be fun, and enjoy.
The trick is to control it. You want to be able to sometimes just bring the tears to here, and don't let them fall. Don't let them fall. Bring it down, and then bring it up, bring it up. Don't let them fall. And it's all technique, and it's really interesting working with your own emotional waves, and then, just sitting on them. Because that's a whole other story you're telling about the character who won't shed a tear, but feels everything.
I love JG's take on Sam because I could hear this Ken Burns' The Civil War as he was speaking.
I do like coming out with the fact that I'm this cranky old human admiral now, so that it could come out from behind the mask. I've done a lot of stuff with masks.
It had weight to it. It had these events. He had lived them. He had survived them. The consequences of those events were clear to everyone. He was the Shelby Foote of Prelude to Axanar for sure.
One of the reasons I think has the mentality of a jarhead. I think it's a cross between, George Patton. That's what I'm going for anyway. George Patton and it's like Harry Truman. Very plain speaking, incredibly moral, but understating son of a bitch.
I knew that Alec could do it. I knew he was confident enough to do it because when we first started this, he said to me, "If you don't think I can do it, you tell me. Don't let me do it if you don't think I can."
I think we do things that we love doing. If we're smart, we don't just live. We don't just let life happen to us. We take charge of life, and we say, "Here's a hill I want to climb."
With that kind of confidence, I've felt that I could get anything out of him I needed to, and he's also so responsive to the input. We talked about Dick Winters. I made him watch Band of Brothers again.
I've done that over and over in my life. I went to law school, graduated, passed the bar, and said, I'm not going to do this. And I then went to USC, and I coached volleyball for 4 years. My goal was to coach on the U.S. national team, and I did. I coached in 2 world championships, and at USC we won an NCAA championship. And I said, okay, enough of that, let's do something else. And I went and started a series of businesses, started a technology company that did very, very well. Star Trek has always been a passion of mine. And this character, Garth of Izar, has always been my favorite character in the original series. And we only see him in 1 episode. And I always wanted to know more. We didn't sign up to be warriors. That's not what Starfleet's about. We proved that we could do what we needed to do to defend the Federation.
I'm amazed by crowdfunding. I'm amazed by the idea of where crowdfunding is going to go. I'm amazed at Alec and Diana Kingsbury and their ability to ride these waves, these enormous waves in this ocean of enthusiasm that they've created by management and contact with this fan base. It's great to be a part of it. It's great to see what's possible, and it hasn't even begun. Crowdfunding, we're in the infancy of crowdfunding. I'm excited about where it's going to go. Not to get too Richard Hatch about all this.
I wish CBS would embrace us the way Lucasfilm embraces Star Wars fan films, where they have a program and they have guidelines and say, here are the guidelines. You want to make a Star Wars fan film? Follow these guidelines. And then they have a film festival at the Star Wars Celebration for I mean, how amazing is that? And we can't get CBS there yet.
What's not to love? It's great. And people say, don't you get tired of it? I go, hell no. What? Okay, people are going to walk up and say, I just love you. I think you're wonderful. Oh, I'm just sick to death of this. This has got to stop. Security.
By now you will know of the attack by forces of the Klingon Empire. There can be no justification for such brutality. Make no mistake, the Federation will stand united until the last star burns cold and we see this scourge of Klingon aggression shattered like waves upon the firmament. We will not fail.
To stay up to date with the latest Axanar news, please subscribe to our channel. Click the bell icon to receive notifications whenever new videos are uploaded, and be sure to visit us on the web at axanar.com.